All right, Chapter 12 is a chapter on branding and consumption. So those of you who have had classes in public relations or even marketing classes, there may be an aspect of this that'll be nice and familiar to you. So that's an added plus. So as always, here are the chapter objectives of what will be covered in this. And the chapter is relatively unique to most Comm organizational textbooks, this notion of branding. So anyways, so here it is, an old definition, this idea that the language of the image, and certainly there's a lot of research on visual communication nowadays, that we have become very much of a visual era, and that you know, we brand things a lot, including ourselves. So in terms of history, the branding began obviously in the second half of the 19th century, and very much was connected to this notion of capitalism. Now, overall, one thing that's important to understand is that branding is predominantly a communicative process that attempts to shape the way consumers view reality and even their view of themselves. And that's important to understand. So branding is predominantly a communicative process that helps, or is an attempt to shape your view of reality and your view of yourself. So it's significant, particularly from a critical perspective, becomes very, very important. Oh, let me go back one. This notion of USP is this unique selling proposition. It's this idea that your life is lacking something, and that if you have product XYZ, that, you know, life will get better. And there we go. There's the formula. So definition of a brand is listed here. There are many different definitions. This is as good as any. It's important to understand the difference and take the time to make sure that you understand what the difference is between a brand and a product, because they are not the same. It's important that we help, that industries want us to develop a relationship with a particular brand, and so it becomes something we're comfortable with and something that we associate with ourselves. Okay. So this idea of a floating signifier effect that you see listed here basically means that meaning can be relatively arbitrarily assigned. It doesn't even necessarily have to directly relate. And there are many great examples in your textbook that illustrate these floating signifier effects. So make sure you're confident in that. All right. Other things. Oh, your book talks about how people are branded. I love the Kardashian examples. There are many great examples in this chapter. And then it's, as the author notes at the end of the chapter, things change all the time, and examples change all the time. And nowadays, you know, just a few years after he probably wrote these words, there are different examples that you and I can think of in terms of what's on popular media. So in terms of branding and our identity, the idea that branding and the consumption of branding shapes our identity and our sense of self, and that the idea of shopping has become this social activity that you engage in, and as a result, that's led to what's called emotional branding, which I believe will be discussed here. So understand this. And again, it's very much about this notion of connection, that it wants you to have that relationship again, which might sound, for some people who are just not into it at all, really bizarre. And yet for a large portion of the population, there is a strong emotional connection to a particular brand. And so again, here you have it summarized, this personal dialogue. You're an active recipient or participant in this relationship with the brand, and vice versa. And it continues to grow, and it's a very flexible relationship. And so it's something to be aware of, and be aware of how you're being targeted, and the marketing is attempting to persuade you and to lock you into that relationship. Okay, marketing, that has the notion of that there has become a blurring of the line between programming and advertising, and again, remembering that it's all about commercialization and consumption capitalism. Uh, the motives are often strictly monetary. So again, you see some examples of these. Take the time to read the examples. I think they very much help it the concepts make sense. Okay. This idea of the sovereign consumer is the idea, again, on that relationship that you have, that it's a very intimate one, and that's the target audience that they are going for, and this emphasis on this. It's also important to understand this notion of self-branding, that as an this entrepreneurial self, that we brand ourselves and we present ourselves in a certain way. We want to be known in a certain way, and some of you throughout your college career, you may have been asked, how do you want to brand yourself within an interview? How do you want to present yourself? You know, what would you do? What would your own personal elevator pitch be, as it were? Okay, so in terms of this ethics, it's not unethical except when there is an inconsistency um, between motivation and presentation. So this idea of a critical approach, you know, that helps you understand how branding works and how predominant it is in society, and how prevalent it is, and to be aware of that. It's really important that you understand how many messages you are being sent and bombarded with day in and day out, and that you are aware of these both subtle and not so subtle direct attempts to persuade you and to manipulate your behavior. And be aware of that and make choices with that in mind. And other people have argued that this notion of branding is very much integral to our own democratic process. Some of the debate on branding has been in the advertisements that's been targeted toward kids, and the idea that there's this nag factor that parents will give in, you know, when their kids go on and on and on and on. I know that I have two boys, and for us it's about Tilly's. You know, can we please go to, they have to have an outfit from Tilly's, something about that particular brand, and knowing that they got that particular item of clothing, and we'll go on round and round on it. And sometimes I give them the nag factor works. And I think we're near the end. Yes, last one. So again, this idea of consumption being disempowering when we are no longer engaged. So anyways, I think branding is important to understand, and you get a unique perspective on it from a communication organizational point of view in this chapter. Definitely shorter than the leadership chapter. Okay, so that's it. I'll see you online.